Okay, so today I'm gonna talk about the post production and the finish of this project that I've worked on. And in my previous video, I mentioned that it's for open source software, and I wanted to create this animation for the community because it's an open source uh, piece of software called Neovim. I really love it, just like I love Blender, and I want to walk you guys through something first and kind of just show you how I navigate through projects. So obviously we're starting off in the terminal, as I had mentioned before. Um, I have a little bit of experience in programming and coding. So one thing in the world of coding and programming and even technical artists is using Git and GitHub. And so if you're familiar with GitHub, and if you're not, Git and GitHub are two different things. First off, Git is a version control piece of software that you install locally on your machine. And what that helps do is it does version control, and it's used a lot in the world of programming because people want to be able to it's a simple way to explain it. It's a way of saving things in a different way that's more intelligent, I would say. And it's highly used in the world of programming. And so GitHub is another thing. And so GitHub, what GitHub is in simple terms, it's a cloud platform to store all your information, and it's called a repository basically. So you get on GitHub, make a GitHub account, and then now you have a repository. And that's where a lot of people will push up their code and store it. And so the reason I'm talking about this stuff is because I like to be very organized with my projects and my files and templates. And so the way I usually store my templates, I do have them locally, but I also like to store them in my repository on GitHub so that I can pull them down anytime I need to. So let's say I'm off traveling somewhere and I don't have necessary access to all my stuff. Well, if I have access to my GitHub, which is anywhere, I can pull that stuff down via using Git on my local computer. So if I have Git installed, and you can always check if Git is installed by just typing Git and then version. So as you can see, I do have Git installed, and you could just type the same thing in your terminal to check if you have it. I'm using PowerShell again on my machine. I just have it stylized by setting a couple things up. So going into this, I also have GitHub for the command line installed, and so if I type in that, right, I could do a lot of other things with this. So I'm not going to talk about that much. That's a different thing, but I'm going to talk about Git. So what I could do if I was starting a new project, I can pull down my template project folder. So you could do what you call cloning. So I can do a git clone and then type in the address to that repo, right? And then pull it down. So now it's cloning it down. And now I do have my project folder, which is the CG production. So let's say I want to rename that, right? And I want to do all this stuff in the terminal because I like to just operate in the terminal to navigate faster. So I can rename this folder to something like, I don't know, test project, for YouTube. It's a long name, right? So that's my new project, right? Test project. So we can go in that project and I'll just show you the folders. And so these are the default folders in here, right? And this is how I always start a project. It's a template use. I can clone it down real quick, rename it, and then I can also get rid of a secret folder or a hidden folder, which this is another process I always do. I always get rid of this folder when I bring it down because again, like Git and GitHub, they're very intelligent and it's version control, so it's always storing information. And right now, this folder is storing all the information from my template, and I don't want to overwrite stuff in my template, so I'm just going to get rid of that. So I deleted that, and so now this is my template folder, and I can just show you the quick structure by showing you the tree. And basically, my first folder is docs, holds a bunch of information. CAD, if I have any kind of CAD information to build from. I have a Blender folder, which is not much in there. And then I have a Max folder, which is for 3D Studio Max. And there's a whole structure in there, how I navigate projects, because I have a lot of experience in 3D Studio Max. And then I have a SketchUp folder because I deal with SketchUp sometimes a lot. Images, where all my renderings go. And then post-production, as you can see, I have a lot of different folders in there. And then video, for video editing if I need to do that, or any kind of audio. I sometimes I'll also add extra folders too, like if I'm dealing with audio, or even way up here in the docs folder, I'll sometimes add a reference folder below mail out. So I'll do like a 6_reference if I need if I have a lot of references that I'm gathering up for a project. So that's a quick little thing I just wanted to show you guys, because this is how I navigate through my projects. I'm just very organized. And another thing that I do is, if I'm collecting information in from something, I always create new folders like this. So if I have a folder for today's date, I'll do something like that, right? And then folder A. So if I go in here and then folder A, and then now I collect information. If a round of information comes in, I'll collect that. And then if I have another round of information come in that same day, I'll create a folder B. And then another round of information, I'll create another folder. And it's just a way of keeping things organized as I'm going through projects or collecting new information, right? And then if it's the next day, same process, it's the same exact process. So this is what I'll do as I progress through things, so that I don't have one giant folder of information and then I'm just lost, because now everything is this big hodgepodge of information. So I know this is a little bit boring, but being organized, in my opinion, can make things a lot faster. So you set up a system and you follow the system and you continue using the system. And then over time, if things change, you can make tweaks to your system. And then, you keep progressing. And, like a year from now, you'll have a really great system and set, and you don't have to always think about your system. You just use the system and it works. And now you just get to be free flowing in your creative process. So again, I know it's a little bit boring, but I wanted to just walk you guys through kind of like my mindset when I approach projects, so that I can just purely focus on the creative aspect of projects. Okay. All right. So let's go over to Blender, and we'll walk through my process of how I'm rendering things out and going into post-production. So again, I walked you guys quickly through Flamenco, which is a great render management software. Again, you guys should check it out, install it, because it really helps you out in your productions. So again, I'm kind of reiterating some things here. I like to render my images 1920 by 1920 as a square image. I'm not doing super high res 4K stuff. I'm just simply rendering 1920 by 1920. That works. Still highly used today. And these were my shots that I created. So again, walking through, we got 7 different shots. And that's shot 500, 600, and 700, which is the logo. All right. Okay. So now here, my frame range is 120. So we did that speed ramping thing that I had showed you guys previously, where it kind of slows down in the middle and then speeds up. So it speeds up in the beginning, slows down, and then it speeds up at the end. Okay. And so going over to my output section, I render multi-pass EXRs, and I'm using this DWAA lossy codec. I can't remember what it stands for, but there's some videos that talks about it where they're highly optimized. And so they're, I believe, smaller and more optimized than PNG files. And then on top of that, it is a multi-layered EXR file. So I have a bunch of render passes in this file too. So let me show you guys my render passes. So these are all the render passes that I'm using in these shots. So here, got cryptomats. I'm getting all these out. I got any AOVs? No AOVs. Light groups, no light groups. Okay. So by default, this is what my file is set up as. So I've set up this file. I've watched a lot of different videos on how to properly comp a Blender multi-pass EXR file properly. And so this is why I have it set up this way. And again, I'm using systems, so I don't have to think about this stuff. It's already there by default. So if I make a new file, right, and I restart, you will see that this stuff is already set up. So I have my EXR already properly set up. I have my render settings already set through here. And then I have my render passes already properly set. So as you've seen in the other file, these render passes are the exact same here and here. Okay. Now I do need to update this. I do want to do some updates to this. I just haven't not gotten around to it, such as denoising. But you have to set some of these things up through the compositing tab in Blender. So eventually I'm going to get around to that, but I'm not there yet. So let's open this file again and see if I need to walk you guys through anything else. Let's see right here. Okay. So again, EXR file, I render it out to a local, my local external hard drive, not locally on my machine, because I am rendering out a lot of frames and I don't want to use up all my system resources. So I set a path, right, for all my folders where my frames are going to go. And I tend to like to overwrite frames. So I don't like to just create multiple folders of rendering the same image. I'll just overwrite stuff so that it flows right into my compositing software. So I submit my renders through Flamenco. So I name the job, and then from there, I will set the output route. And then all I do is submit it to Flamenco. Okay. And the Flamenco is an add-on. So you'll follow the directions once you look these videos up and to set up Flamenco, and it's pretty easy. And then once you submit it, it gets submit to the render farm, which is this one computer that I'm on, and I'll set it to sleep until I am done using the computer. And then when I'm done using the computer, I will go over to my Flamenco management software and then turn off sleep and set it to awake. And then now it'll take all those render jobs that are queued and it'll start rendering everything. So that's what I do. So from there, now I'm just moving into the compositing phase. So after everything is rendered, right, I have all my frames. Now it's time to move into the compositing phase. And I'll walk you guys through that next. Okay, so now we're in the post-production phase, and this is the software called Natron. So if you're not familiar with Natron, Natron is a open source node-based compositing software. It is very similar to Fusion, and it is very, very similar to Nuke. It looks a lot like Nuke. So if you were to look at both softwares, Nuke and Natron, next to each other, they will be very, very similar. And even some of the shortcuts themselves are very similar. And some the ways it operates, it's very similar to Nuke. However, the software is open source and it's free. I do have some experience using Nuke, but Nuke is very expensive. And, you know, I'm kind of having this development of what I'm calling my open source production workflow. So, you know, using Blender, using Neovim, using Natron, it's all open source, which is great. So you can create a whole production pipeline just using open source software these days, which is great, right? And Natron is very powerful. It's a very powerful program, I'm discovering. I've used Fusion for a very long time also on the side, being that DaVinci Resolve is now free and it's a full platform to do video editing. However, you know, Nuke is an industry standard, and Fusion, you know, is an industry standard. And I like to bounce between both softwares sometimes, but lately I've been using Natron. But being that it's open source, it does have some bugs that I'm discovering. And so like one part that I'm discovering is like when I've been rendering my frames, everything has to be very, very perfect. And I've been getting a lot of errors throughout the rendering process. All right, so moving on. I just want to walk you guys through um, everything that I'm doing here and what you're seeing. If you're not really familiar with node-based compositing and you've just only used After Effects in the past. So node-based compositing is very flexible because it's not very linear. It's very non-linear the way you can do things. And so what you're seeing here is like a pipeline of stuff being connected. And then up here, I have a template set up for Natron, and I like to use templates again. So in that template folder that I showed you guys using Git, I have a Natron template, I have a Fusion template, and then I have some other templates too. But anyways, let's talk about these frames that I rendered though. I'm just rambling on a lot and just giving a lot of information. So let's talk about the animation itself. Okay. So by default, my template will open up with this set of information here, right? And what this is that I'm highlighting is it's all those render passes that I had shown you in Blender. So being that I've rendered all these passes, once I render everything, all I have to do is take this read node right here. All I have to do is take this read node and look for the files that I rendered, and I just load it in, and then my render passes automatically composite the image together right down here at the end. So if we look at this right here, right, you'll see the finished image here, right? So it's a little bit bright. It's because that I don't have some of my colors set right, my color outputs, my OCIOs, my color space. But I can fix that later because I'm not even messing with this in this project itself. I kept it more simple, but I always have everything broken out at the beginning just in case. So like you can see here. Oh, I forgot. These are just what you call the way the material is set up. You're not going to see some of this stuff in the render passes. So like that's the glossy direct, right? This is the glossy indirect, right? So you're seeing the indirect bounce light hitting those objects. So this is the transmission. So you're going to see some stuff in here, right? And then this is the transmission indirect, right? And then we got, what's this one? This is the background. And then this. So I can walk you guys through this template another time. I'm not going to keep rambling. I don't want this video to be too long, but I can save this for another time where I'm actually using this whole this tree node right here. So I'll save this for another time. And so what I did was I kept it actually a lot more simple. All I needed for this animation was to have the EXR come in. I just had the EXR come in, and it comes in very washed because in Blender, I'm using color profiles. And so I re-added those color profiles in, and then I transformed the color profile over here. So I went from, I changed it to a filmic look. And then from there, I did a little bit of grading. I lifted the blacks. I don't like complete blacks in my image, so I'll lift the blacks up a little bit. And then I added some saturation and then some glow, very subtle. And then I also added in some film grain. So I actually composite on top a stock footage, and it's just a little bit of film grain on top because I'm trying to give this the software is called Neovim, and it's very old software. Vim itself is an old software, and then they took it and made it Neovim. So I want to give it this like vintage, old, retro texture to the animation. And then I moved on, and then I did some sharpening. And then from here, I exported out. So I wrote, it's just writing the image. So I exported them out as PNGs here. So that's a simple process. It's just a simple pipeline. And then I have all six, was it 7 shots? So I have all 7 shots here. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 over here. Okay. And so what these pink lines are, they are what you call instances. And in this software, it's called clones. So instead of just copying and pasting, I cloned it so that when I make changes to this glow, it's propagated throughout all these different nodes. If I change something here in the merge node, it's propagated all throughout the rest of them. And I didn't do that for all nodes. I just did that for certain nodes because some nodes will allow it, and then sometimes I need just stuff unique itself. So next thing, I got all shots. I checked them all. Of course, like I said in the beginning of this video showing Natron, there are some things that you have to work through in figuring out how to use Natron properly. I recently started using it, but I like it. So these are all my shots, final shots that I'm working on. And we got that's the last one. And then we have the logo over here. Okay. So one thing that I did with this logo, just to explain a little bit, I turned off the glow. I turned off this color profile because it has a little bit of warmness in it, and I wanted to keep the logo close. I wanted to keep the logo itself to its true color. So I turned off this color profile here, and I just disabled it. And then down here again, I have this footage that's being overlaid on top of everything to give it a little bit of film grain on top. But with that being said, I know that I want to comp this logo on top of shot 100, which is this one here, right? And if I bring this on top just as this film grain, it's not going to come in right. So what I had to do is I had to make sure that this logo is cut out. So by default, when I rendered this EXR out, the alpha channel, right, it has an alpha channel with the logo cut out. See, it's transparent, right? So I had to make sure that it happened all the way through as I'm, developing this shot here, right? So it stays transparent, And then when I get here, I'm losing that transparency because I am comping this grain on top. So what I had to do, and this is the beauty of using node-based compositing, is I can take the alpha from this node, right? So I can select this node here, and then I can take the mask input and drag it to the read node to take its alpha channel and then cut it all out again. So now I got the grain on top, and then I'm cutting it out so that it's just the logo showing now. So that when I bring it into Premiere, right, because I'm going to render these all out as PNGs, it's going to have a transparency alpha channel. And so I can just drop this on top of shot 100 over here now when I come into Premiere. So this is a quick walkthrough. Again, this is Natron. Cool piece of software. Again, it's open source. You can look it up and learn it. If you guys want to get into node-based compositing outside of Blender and then learn something more close to Nuke, so it's a great piece of software. So next we'll move on to Premiere. All right, so now we're in Premiere. I have rendered all my shots out of Natron. And so now we're in the editing phase. So these are the final results. So like I had explained in Blender, the reason I render square shots out is so that I can comp them out in post-production. So now I'm in the editing phase, look how the shot's coming out in the end, and then I'll show you the portrait version also. portrait, you know. So now we got a version for social media, you know, such as Instagram stories. And then we got our uh usual, the 1920 by 1080. And this version is the 1080 by 1920. Okay. So here's the comp itself, the edit. What we got going on is we have some music here at the bottom, and we got shot 100, 200, 300, and so on. And then up here on this line, this is when I start to add like effects and overlays and such. So I added a couple more overlays. This line, which is line 8, and then I have another version of it where it kind of flickers. And then we also have some logos on the final shot. I have the Neovim logo, which I downloaded from the official website, which is, you could just open to grab. It comes in a PNG or SVG file. If you guys are not familiar, I'm also into music. So the music is itself a while back, a couple years ago. It's called Turbo. I'll just play it through real quick. It might be a little bit rough. So it's a cool track. I love it. I'm trying to play stream from the hard drive. The final video at the end of this whole video, so you guys can see the entire thing, and then I'll have the video itself up on YouTube, just playing too, so that you guys can see it. So yeah, the editing process was, again, they're speed ramped, and then I some more. So I had to speed them up about 170% to just kind of fit within. And then on the next shot, the project, I like it. This is the final result, and you guys will see it at the end of this video. So really like working on this. I'm going to be submitting this up to the Neovim community, and then also sharing it across my social media platforms along with YouTube. I hope you guys like it. You know, give me some feedback. So again, yeah, thanks for checking out this video, guys. I'll be having some more videos, more projects, and